Planning a trip to Mexico City is honestly super overwhelming, with endless things to do, endless things to eat, and also many considerations to make. But in this video, we are going to be tackling all the top Mexico City must-knows for first-timers so that you can have the best trip ever, like I just did. Now, in case you're new here, hi, I'm Christina from happytowander.com. And this channel is all about practical travel advice from someone who's been there, done that. So be sure to like and subscribe if that sounds like your kind of thing. Now, first things first, let's just get this out of the way. Do know that CDMX is the common acronym that is used for Mexico City, and this is of course the acronym that is used for the Spanish name of the city, which is Ciudad de Mexico. And as of 2016, this is the official name of the city, so you are going to be seeing it in a lot of articles, in a lot of brochures, pamphlets, etc. So don't get confused, CDMX just means Mexico City, but in Spanish. Next, do know that Mexico City is absolutely massive. It is the biggest metropolis in North America, and it's really spread out as well, so don't pressure yourself into seeing everything because that's just literally not possible. Now, to help you understand just how huge the city actually is, it does spread out to almost 1,500 kilometers squared in the city center, with 9 million people living just in this area. And then when you would extend it out to the metropolitan area of Mexico City, that widens a net to over 7,000 kilometers squared and almost 20 million people living in it. So yes, again, don't pressure yourself into seeing all of it in one trip. It's not gonna happen, but just enjoy it for what it is. Now, because of how massive the city is, staying somewhere central really is key. So I would recommend staying in either Roma or Condesa, which are both really central and super safe neighborhoods that are absolutely beautiful, filled with tons of nice shops, restaurants, boutiques, etc. During my trip, I stayed in Roma Norte for 1 week over at Casa Oliva, which is just a super cute set of apartments that I would highly recommend. It's very safe and secure. All the decor is really cute and pink. And I would say the only downside is it is an older building. The apartments themselves are beautifully renovated, but the building is a bit older, so soundproofing is kind of an issue. But apart from that, it's a really fun place to stay. I can definitely recommend it. I really love the vibe of La Condesa as well, which is another super popular spot for first-time visitors to stay. But I do have to be honest with you, when you stay in these neighborhoods, as lovely as they are, you do kind of get the sense that you are very much in a foreigner bubble, because not only are these neighborhoods super popular with tourists, it's also a really big hub for digital nomads and expats. So generally speaking, you'll find a lot of tourist-oriented places, a lot of more expensive price points perhaps, lots of English menus and things like that. There is also the very complicated issue of gentrification, and there have been really big protests on this topic lately. Discussing this is way beyond the scope of just this travel tips video, but I would say as a tourist, do try to be as respectful as possible when you are staying in these neighborhoods. Try your best to speak Spanish, and do try to go for regulated, locally run accommodation rather than perhaps unregulated Airbnbs. Now, regarding when to visit, something to definitely keep in mind is the fact that Mexico City does have a rainy season. So a lot of the time, people recommend that you visit between November and April to avoid the worst of the rainy season. We personally visited in the middle of March, and this was an absolutely amazing time to go. The weather was perfect, and we were also there for the start of the jacaranda blooming season, which are these beautiful purple trees that you're gonna find all over the city. Usually they peak around the end of March, early April. So I was so happy we caught it, and it just adds this extra layer of magic to all the pictures that you're taking. That said, when you're planning a trip around this period, do be mindful of the Easter holidays, just because of course it's going to be a lot busier, prices are going to be higher, and there will be more crowds. Now, also be aware that the altitude can sneak up on you. At over 2,200 meters of elevation, Mexico City is definitely pretty high up, so do plan to have an easy first 2 days so that you give your body some time to acclimate and you're not just like dying while you're sightseeing. Next, very important, learning some basic Spanish is going to go a long way, so do make sure you prep in advance and learn a little bit of the basics. So some basic phrases I would recommend just for general politeness include hello, which is hola, thank you, which is gracias, please, which is por favor, and excuse me, which is con permiso when you're trying to get by people or squeeze past, and disculpe if you're trying to get somebody's attention, like to ask for help or something. I will be sharing other important phrases throughout this video, but those are the bare basics that I would recommend knowing before you go. In a pinch though, I do have to say a lot of the time locals are happy to try to communicate through Google Translate. I actually survived a 2-hour-long nail appointment using just Google Translate, so don't worry. And this might be a fun opportunity to show off my amazing nails that I got done. If you are in Mexico City, if you want to get an amazing manicure, then definitely look up Casa Muta Nails, which is near the Arena Mexico. Now, to make use of Google Translate, you definitely have to make sure you have mobile data for your trip, because you are going to be using it constantly. Now for this, the easiest way is to definitely get an eSIM, and for that I can definitely recommend Airlo, my go-to eSIM providing instant and affordable connectivity in over 200 destinations, who are also the kind sponsors of this week's video. Now, for those who are new to the concept, eSIM stands for embedded SIM, which means it is pre-installed on your device and works 100% digitally to connect you with local telecom networks, which means instant data access upon arrival without needing to actually switch those physical SIM cards in and out like you might be used to. Now, let me tell you, I was constantly using data during this trip in Mexico City. From using Google Translate to translate signs and get through my nail appointment, to searching up local dishes and also getting Ubers and checking walking directions on Google Maps. I would have been totally lost without internet on this trip. In fact, I needed it as soon as I landed because the airport was chaos. They were actually getting ready for the World Cup at the time, and so there was just construction everywhere, and I couldn't find my airport hotel, which was really stressful, but luckily I was able to search everything up because I had pre-installed my Airlo eSIM before my flight, and as soon as I landed, I could just activate it, so that was perfect and really saved me. Best of all, eSIMs are cheaper than roaming and really easy to install actually through the Airlo app. So if you need a full tutorial for setup, you can check out my step-by-step Airlo guide. And be sure to use the code HAPPY to save 20% on your first purchase until the end of June by scanning this QR code to download the app. All right, thanks again to Airlo for sponsoring this week's video. Now let's move on to some more money matters. Now, you should know that in Mexico, of course, the currency is the peso, but they do use the $ symbol, so don't get confused. And in advance of your trip, I would really recommend kind of getting used to this exchange rate so that when you are shopping around, you have a rough idea at least of how much things are costing, because that's really going to save you from getting scammed. Before you go, I would also recommend getting a travel-friendly card that isn't going to be charging you insane currency conversion fees or foreign transaction fees, especially for withdrawing cash from ATMs, because on this trip, I noticed some ATMs would charge you commission fees of upwards of like 150 pesos, which is crazy. Luckily, I had my Wise card, which I've been using for years, and this is a special card that allows you to send and spend money around the world at the real exchange rate, which allows you to avoid any hidden fees in the process. And you even get 2 free ATM withdrawals. So this was really handy in Mexico City. They even send you the card for free when you make an account. You can check out my referral link in the description and you can get your first transfer for free. All right, now let's move on to some Mexico City transport tips for getting around. First, as someone who loves exploring new places on foot, I do have to say you cannot expect to walk everywhere in Mexico City. It is way too spread out here. So yes, you can walk within neighborhoods, but walking between them is probably not going to be a good idea. And plan to catch some forms of transport other than walking. And for that, my top recommendation really is to use Ubers or DDs to catch rides around the city really easily and safely. In any case, people usually do advise you don't take just random taxis. In general, I do think it is a good idea to order a ride from an app just because there's always paper trails, so you know how much you're gonna pay up front and you're less likely to get scammed. I used Uber all throughout my stay in Mexico City, and really the rates were super affordable. Even going from the airport into the city center, it was less than 30 Canadian dollars, and pretty much every ride I took from that point on was less than 10 Canadian dollars, even traveling some pretty far distances. And yes, of course, you can use public transport for a fraction of that cost, but the downside there for tourists is the fact that a lot of the time public transport does take longer. So sometimes it is worth paying that extra just to have a direct connection rather than worrying about a journey that takes double the time. If you're getting to the city from the airport though, something to keep in mind is that Ubers and DDs and like rideshare apps in general, kind of a difficult situation right now at the airport, just because sometimes taxi drivers will get upset, they'll start protesting, and so you can have days when it is just really tough for you to get an Uber from the airport. So in any case, I think it is a good idea to kind of have a backup plan in mind. In a pinch, if you want something really easy, I actually stayed overnight at an airport hotel on my first night. So if you want an easy pickup point, maybe that's a hack to just go to an airport hotel and then get your Uber there rather than stress out about trying to get picked up at the terminal. Alternatively, you can just go to one of the authorized taxi stands at the airport. I will say as soon as you arrive, there's going to be so many people trying to get your attention, trying to get you in a taxi, but look for the authorized taxi stands that have fixed pricing, and usually you can just go up to there, prepay, and then you'll get a receipt, and then you'll be able to go in the taxi and know that that taxi is not going to scam you because you've paid already. There are, of course, also public transport options. There is the metro and the metro bus, but direct connections are kind of a challenge. And also, if you have luggage, it's probably not the best idea to bring all those bags on board the metro or metro bus. Now, on that note, if you do plan to get around Mexico City by car, do be very mindful that traffic is absolutely awful in this city. So do try to avoid between 7 to 9 a.m. and also 5 to 7 p.m. Things can be pretty tough to predict though, so I would advise about an hour before you're meant to leave. Do check Google Maps just to see how bad traffic is and adjust accordingly, because you might have to leave a lot earlier than you thought you would. Now, if traffic is crazy and you've already dropped off all your suitcases and stuff, of course, you can opt into the really robust and actually quite efficient public transport system in Mexico City. many of which together form the Integrated Mobility System of Mexico City, or in Spanish, the Sistema de Movilidad Integrada de la Ciudad de México. The bad news is there are so many options and so many routes that it can be absolutely overwhelming for a first-time visitor, especially when you search something up on Google Maps and then all these different options pop up. But good news, as a tourist, you don't really need to worry about the entire system. If you're sticking to the touristy areas, you only need to know a select few modes of transport, and I can simplify it for you in a really easy way. Simply put, under this integrated system umbrella, you're going to find these main modes of transport, each of which has its own color-coded symbol that more or less corresponds to what that transport mode actually looks like in real life. Starting with the metro, which has 12 lines, by the way, an orange symbol, and usually the trains themselves are orange. Then there's the Servicio de Transportes Eléctricos Trolleybus, or the electric trolley buses, and the Tren Ligero, which are blue. There's also the Red de Transporte de Pasajeros, or RTP buses, which are green, the metro buses, which are red and have their own dedicated lanes, meaning they can beat traffic, which is very handy. They're also super modern and nice. They even have like USB charging ports, which I thought was really cool. As well as the corredores, which are these smaller purple buses, the cablebus, which is this light blue gondola system, and the ecobici bikes, which aren't fully green but usually have this green sticker. Now, the good news is having a Metro card like this actually allows you to pay for pretty much all these modes of transport. The only exception are some of the older buses will only take cash, but for the most part, you can use this one card to pay for all these different modes, which makes things really easy. As of 2024, there are no more paper tickets, so this Metro card is something that you definitely do need. And you will probably read online that a lot of these systems actually are built to take contactless cards like Apple Pay, Google Pay, or even just a Visa card. Do not trust that, because in my experience using a Visa card and also my friend who tried to use hers as well, they did not work. You got this big fat X that was really embarrassing to see flash up on the screen. And just anecdotally looking through Reddit and stuff, it seems like a lot of foreigners do struggle with using their foreign issued cards for these contactless terminals. So I think just to avoid the stress, do get yourself a Metro card. But actually, let's just make that its own tip. Do make sure you buy a Metro card for transport, either at a machine or at one of the ticket windows at the different stations. This card only costs 15 pesos, and then you load money onto it that you're going to use for each journey afterwards. So I think for the Metro, each journey one way is like 5 pesos. So you could load it up with 10 pesos if you wanted to do a round trip journey, or just do more if you want to be covered for your whole trip. A good thing to note is that you can actually share this Metro card as well. So if you're traveling in a group, not every single person needs to have their own separate card because you're just loading money onto it. You can actually, in theory, have one card per family. Now, something I have heard in terms of a tip, if you are traveling with a family and you're all sharing one Metro card or maybe a group of friends, is instead of just going through and passing the card back, have one person who's like the designated card guardian, and then have them tap each person through. And then at the end, they'll just tap themselves through. And then that's just gonna save a lot of time compared to being like, oh, Daryl, here's my card, go, go. Now, again, you can buy these cards in person, either at the machines, which is what I would personally recommend. Usually these machines can be found at bigger stations and also at the Metro bus stations. Alternatively, you can also buy them at the ticket offices or the little ticket windows known as taquillas, which is what we did, but honestly, it was quite stressful. The language barrier made the process a lot more difficult than it needed to be. And afterwards, when I saw the machine, I was like, why didn't we just do this? So definitely go for the machine. It is way easier. Also take note that something really cute about Mexico City is that all the different metro stations actually have their own special symbol and icons. So you can use those to kind of navigate and orient yourself if you're not great at reading Spanish. And take note as well that on the metro and also on metro buses, there are certain women-only carriages. These are usually marked by a pink sign, and these carriages tend to be for women as well as children under the age of 12. And also differently abled individuals. Now, as a tourist, again, it probably makes the most sense for you to stick to a combination of rideshare apps and also the modes of transport like the Metro and Metro bus that accept the Metro card. But just for the sake of thoroughness, do know that there are a ton of smaller buses as well, which are known as peceros, and these ones do require coins for payment. Now, let's move on to a very fun section, which is Mexico City food and drink tips. First off, very, very important, don't just get your food recommendations off of social media. One of my personal pet peeves when I was researching this trip was I really saw that people tended to recommend the exact same 5 or 6 places when in reality there are thousands of food spots in this city. And I do think that in a city with as many great food options as Mexico City, it doesn't make sense to just go to the exact same places as everyone else. I'm not saying that they're not good places, but if you're just gonna go there to stand in line with a bunch of other tourists who saw the exact same TikTok as you, I feel like that takes away from the magic a little bit, especially when you have so many great options. That said, I know that there are certain restaurants that are like once in a lifetime, really cool experience places like Puyol, for instance. So If you want to go to certain places that you've seen and it's like a dream of yours, make sure you are booking in advance. It's very important to avoid disappointment that you do make a booking. But otherwise, don't worry. There are thousands of places for you to eat, so you don't need to be stressed about food at all. It sounds silly, but one of the easiest ways to find a good place to eat, and this did not steer me wrong in the entire week that I was there, is to just hop on Google Maps and then type in the type of cuisine that you're looking for and just see what's close to you. And really you'll see that there are tons of great options and you are likely to find your own gems that way, which I find personally more magical as well. In my opinion though, street food really is the main star of the show in Mexico City and is the main must try. And I do think that all these little taco stands and all these little stalls are just kind of at the heart of the food scene in Mexico City and what makes it unique. So I would personally recommend prioritizing these as much as you can, because the bonus benefits as well are that they are cheaper and also they are faster. So if you are trying to sightsee and trying to cram a lot into a day, it is nice to be able to just grab a delicious bite for like 15 pesos and just be on your way. Honestly, nothing compares to just walking around and seeing what's good. One of my little rules of thumb that I go by are I kind of look to see where construction workers or police officers are eating, and I'm usually like, that is a good place that is not going to rip me off. And yes, you can use Google Maps as a starting point for research, but again, just walking around is the best, because actually one of my favorite street stalls that we found was not even listed on Google Maps. So you just never know what you're gonna find. And again, it just feels more special when you sort of stumble upon it. Now, in regards to must tries, I'm gonna keep it simple and tell you that tortillas and toppings come in infinite varieties in Mexico, and they're all really worth trying. So some common ways that you can enjoy your tortillas with toppings, the most popular, of course, is tacos. And I'm sure you're probably familiar with tacos, but tacos really vary by type across the country. There's lots of different specialties to different regions. In Mexico City specifically, one that is very popular is the suadero taco, which is made out of beef. I think it's like the cut between the ribs and the legs, something like that, sort of brisket-like. And this is slow cooked to perfection and then kind of like fried until crispy. And it's super, super good. Chicharrones or pork rinds are another really popular one. And there is of course the almighty taco al pastor, which is made with pork and pineapple and kind of cooked on like a rotating spit like doner meat would be. And this is actually a Mexico City invention, so definitely worth trying while you're here. Another thing that's really popular in Mexico City are tacos de canasta, which translates literally to basket taco. And these are tacos that are usually filled with a stew-like filling, and they are so named for the baskets that they're typically sold in. And people will usually make a bunch of these tacos, load them into a basket, and the steam of all the tacos kind of like keep them warm throughout the day. So yeah, definitely keep an eye out for those as well. Again though, there are many, many ways to enjoy tortillas with toppings. Moving on to some more tips, do learn how to say certain key ingredients and food words in Spanish, just because you are going to encounter them pretty much every meal. And you don't want to have to Google Translate every single ingredient. This is especially important if you have any dietary restrictions or anything like that. Now, if you love Mexican food like I do, you probably are familiar with some of the terms already, but trust me, just because you know carnitas and barbacoa from Chipotle doesn't mean you are prepared for the Mexico City food scene. Some words you will 100% encounter though include con, which means with, and sin, which means without. If you prefer an easy life and you aren't picky, if you're at street stalls or anything like that, you can just say con todo, which means with everything, and then they're gonna prepare the dish for you as it normally comes. Other keywords include picante, which means spicy, and trust me, Mexican spicy is on a whole other level, so if they're telling you that something is picante, that probably means that you are not built for it. Meat-wise, especially with tacos and stuff, they are so specific about the cuts of meat. So it's not just gonna be beef and pork and chicken. There are specific words to designate which part of the animal that cut came from. And this is important to know because, you might be wanting steak, but then accidentally order a beef head taco or beef tongue taco. So make sure you know the difference and make sure you are searching up ingredients if you're not sure. Honestly though, practice makes perfect, so just be sure to try as many restaurants and food places as you can and you're gonna learn these words pretty quick. Finally, there are two more bits of vocabulary that you should know. The first is when you're walking into a space or when you are leaving a space and there are other diners, you do say provecho, which is kind of like an equivalent of bon appetit or enjoy your meal. It's kind of just like a polite, oh, I see you're also having food, so enjoy your meal kind of thing. And also when you are dining at a restaurant, do know that the bill usually isn't brought to you unless you ask for it. So to ask for it, you say la cuenta por favor. Two additional words to know here are tarjeta, which is card, so you're saying you're paying by card. Sometimes they'll specify credito or debito, but yeah, usually it's credit. And there's also efectivo, which means cash. All right, next up, let's move on to some Mexico City attraction tips. Firstly, definitely do plan your day strategically to avoid backtracking. Again, the city is so spread out that you don't want to have to jump between neighborhoods on the same day. So definitely split up your sightseeing, group them by neighborhood, and your itinerary is going to thank you. For my first visit, the main areas that I split up my sightseeing by day included the Centro Histórico, Chapultepec Park, and also Polanco since I was feeling ambitious, Roma Norte and La Condesa, which are right next to each other, Coyoacán, and Xochimilco as a half-day trip, and Teotihuacan as well as its own half-day trip. From my experience, if you dedicate a day each to these different neighborhoods, you can very easily get around on foot and then only have to Uber or take public transport in and out. Now, to prioritize from the list of a million things to do, what I would personally recommend is during your time in Mexico City, do make sure you go to at least one art-related attraction. So for me, the Modern Art Museum was one of my favorites because I got to see a lot of Frida Kahlo paintings. But if you're not into that type of art, just choose the type of art that you are personally most interested in. The National Art Museum, for instance, is in a stunning building. Next, definitely do a history-related attraction, depending on the type of history that you're personally interested in. So I know that the Museum of Anthropology is probably the most famous one. It is incredible, it's massive, it will take you probably a whole day if you want to do it justice. But there's a ton of other history museums as well in the city. Like there's a museum dedicated to the Mexican Revolution. Or if you are interested in Mesoamerican history, I do think the Templo Mayor Museum is really cool because you get to walk around ruins, and they have a pretty big museum on site as well that gives you kind of like a mini condensed version of the Anthropology Museum. So it is, I think, more manageable than the Anthropology Museum, which is just so big. There's also Chapultepec Castle if you want to learn about history in a beautiful building. On that note, another must-do, I think, is also just making sure you at least go inside one beautiful building just to admire the architecture. So the Palacio de Bellas Artes with the murals is probably one of the most popular options in that regard. But I actually think the Palacio Postal right around the corner is even more beautiful. Now, I will be releasing a full video about the best things to do in Mexico City, so be sure to subscribe so you don't miss that. Now, in terms of timing, do be aware that a lot of the major museums are actually closed on Monday. So be sure to check hours and plan accordingly. This includes pretty much all the state-run museums as well as Section 1 of the Bosque de Chapultepec. So if you wanted to go see those, definitely don't save them for a Monday because they will straight up not be open. But looking on the flip side, this means Mondays are usually a pretty good day to do one of those half-day trips you had planned, like if you wanted to go to Teotihuacan or over to Xochimilco. Or you can head over to some of the few attractions that are open on a Monday, like the Revolution Monument, the Torre Latinoamericana, or the Sumaya Museum, which is not just open on Monday, but also free, so really a win-win. Now, while we're on the topic of days to avoid, you should also know that Sunday tends to be a free museum day for people who are residents of Mexico. So if you are not a resident of Mexico, instead of hitting up all the museums on Sundays like other people would be, I would advise you save your time for other activities, like for instance, riding a bike through the city. A very cool program that they have on Sundays here is usually from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m.-ish. They actually close down a lot of the major roads to cars so that pedestrians and cyclists can actually have free reign. The most prominent of these streets is the Paseo de la Reforma, which is of course the main thoroughfare of the city. And also around the Angel of Independence statue, there tends to be a lot of stalls there that will actually rent you a bike for free. So you just need to bring 2 pieces of ID and get there early. But you can easily just use your Metro card to rent an EcoBici bike, or there's other bike rental places in the area. So yes, if you're around on a Sunday, this could be a very fun activity to try. My friend Suze did this and said it was really, really fun. I personally did not because I am tragic on a bike, but definitely worth considering if you are not. I'll link Suze's resources below so you can learn more about it. Now, I've yapped a lot about bad days to go to museums, so in terms of good days, something to take note of is the Noche de Museos, which is usually the last Wednesday of the month. And on this day, they have special exhibitions and special events like little concerts and free tours and things like that. So that might be a nice opportunity to extend your sightseeing. Now, if you are interested in going, I highly recommend you book your tickets for the Frida Kahlo Museum well in advance. This is pretty much the only museum in the entire city that you do have to book in advance, but the catch is the tickets go super, super quickly. We booked ours about 3 weeks in advance in March, and the availability was already super limited. Now, for some reason, a lot of people will say that this museum is a tourist trap. I don't really think that's the case. If you are super interested in Frida Kahlo's life, this is definitely a must-see because it is the house that she lived in for a very long time, and there's a lot of really interesting personal objects, and it kind of tells you about the history and her story and things like that. But I think if you are looking to see just a lot of her art, then you are probably going to be disappointed, because that's absolutely not what this museum is about. If you are hoping to just see a bunch of her paintings, then maybe it makes more sense to go to the Modern Art Museum instead. There's a lot of her most iconic works that you can see there, but in regards to the actual Casa Azul itself, it is more about her life story. Another pro to booking this museum is you actually do get free tickets to the Anahuacalli Museum as well. And this museum is in a building that was designed by Frida's husband, Diego Rivera, and it also houses his massive collection of pre-Hispanic art. It's only about a 10-minute drive away from the Casa Azul, so worth checking out. Now, the reason I keep specifying Casa Azul rather than Frida Kahlo Museum is something really weird I noticed on my recent trip is that as of September 2025, there are actually 2 Frida Kahlo museums in Coyoacan. So the Casa Azul is, of course, the main iconic museum of Frida Kahlo that everybody knows about and visits, but there is a new one in the Casa Roja, the red house, which is just like around the corner from the main one. And this is a brand new museum that is supposedly run by Frida Kahlo's actual relatives. So the story behind this house is Frida did own it, but she gifted it to her sister named Cristina, who raised her family there. So basically, Christina's descendants have now opened up this new museum with a lot of personal items and things. So yeah, it might be worth checking out. I haven't personally seen it, but do know that there are different ones, so don't get them mixed up. Now, speaking of museums, if you're planning to visit the popular ones, I would really advise getting there pretty much as soon as they open, because otherwise you're going to be encountering a lot of crowds. I personally visited the Chapultepec Castle early in the morning, first thing as soon as it opened, and I had spaces like this all to myself. Alternatively, you can also wait until just before closing. This is another handy trick that I personally use for the Museum of Anthropology. So I admit I only really got the highlights, but the upside of going late was that I, again, had so many of the cool artifacts pretty much all to myself. And in addition to just going early or going just before closing, also try to seek out other museums. I think Mexico City actually has over 150 museums, so needless to say, there are way more than just the top 5 that everybody goes to. For us personally, when we went to Coyoacan to go see Frida Kahlo's museum, we actually also went to the Leon Trotsky house, which is in the same neighborhood, but like a fraction of the crowds, and also historically super significant because he was assassinated there. And if you're into architecture and have more time, there are a ton of really, really cool house museums that a lot of them you have to book in advance, like the Casa Organica, but in the future, I'd love to go explore these because they look super, super cool. All that said, some of the best things to do in Mexico City are free. So don't pressure yourself into paying for a bunch of attractions, because there are tons of parks and plazas and viewpoints and museums even that don't cost anything. There are some really amazing parks in the city, like the Parque Mexico and also the Bosque de Chapultepec. In addition to walking around, the zoo is free, and that zoo is actually home to the, fun fact, only panda in the world that isn't owned by China. Crazy. And there's a lot of fun surprises as well, like a Canadian totem pole, and even this really cool garden that was like this enclosed space in the park where they were just blasting classical music, and it was super peaceful, called the Audiorama. Other great freebies include 2 awesome museums in Polanco, the fairly small Museo CHRISTINA'S, which is devoted to contemporary art, and then right next door to it, the Museo Sumaya, which is this massive, incredibly designed museum that has a very cool collection of both Mexican art and also European masters. And surprisingly, on the top floor, there's actually the largest Rodin collection outside of France. So yeah, it's all free, and I just am still mind blown by that. So definitely check that out if you're looking for a free thing to do. In the Historic Center, we also happened upon the Museo del Estanquillo, which has a few small exhibitions, but more importantly, one of the coolest rooftop terraces in the Historic Center. You can also even tour the Palacio Nacional, the National Palace, for free if you bring your passport and you manage to snag a spot on one of the coveted tours. There's a museum attached to that building as well that is a World Cultures Museum, I think, that is also free. And another really amazing free spot that you should definitely check out is the Biblioteca Vasconcelos. Beware though that if you want to take photos on a camera rather than on a phone, you will actually have to fill out paperwork. Now, in terms of other fun things to do definitely go to a Lucha Libre show. I grew up on wrestling, so maybe I really just enjoyed it because of the nostalgia, but this is one of the most high energy and most fun things that you can do in Mexico City, and it's not that expensive. There are a lot of tours that will sell you package deals to go watch this, but just go on Ticketmaster and you can buy tickets directly from there. I don't want to go into too much detail here for the sake of time, but be sure to check out the written version of this guide where I share a lot more details about kind of the practical, like where to sit, where to get tickets, what to do once you get there, that kind of thing. Now, in terms of day trips, I do want to say be very careful when you are planning a day trip to go see the Teotihuacan pyramids. I feel like this could be a video in and of itself. I highly recommend doing this half-day trip, but definitely do your research because there's so many tour companies and it's very easy to fall victim to different traps. Most companies offer the same service. just beware of some very slight differences. Key considerations include shared flight versus private flight, transport included or no, photos included or no, breakfast in a cave included or just breakfast in general or no, and any extra inclusions like visits to Obsidian or Agave workshops. Some tours also bundle it with a visit to the Basilica of Our Lady of Guadalupe. I personally booked a tour with Volare, who are the oldest hot air balloon operators in that area, and honestly, such a magical experience. Seriously, like a bucket list activity and really worth the money. Everything was super professional from start to finish. I will link that in the description. We opted for the simplest tour we could find, just hot air balloon and transport, and we enjoyed it a lot. Especially because we got some extra time at the pyramids, 3 hours, which was great. Now, last thing on this topic, the artisan markets in Mexico City are unreal, and there are so many of them. I honestly consider these to be like attractions in and of themselves. I am personally not a huge shopper, but trust me, I did so much more shopping on this trip than I have ever done on any trip. And all you have to do is keep an eye out for the word artesania, and usually you'll be able to find, there's like one in every neighborhood, so definitely keep an eye out. I really especially like the one in Coyoacan, and also the San Juan one, which is really close to Chinatown. Now finally, here are some Mexico City tips for once you arrive. This first one is very, very important, and that is to not drink the tap water, and if you want to be extra cautious, don't even use it to brush your teeth. I personally learned this the hard way when I accidentally gave myself food poisoning. So I was just making coffee in the morning and I was multitasking, and then I just kind of went into autopilot, filled the coffee maker with tap water, and that was the only day on the entire trip that I even felt remotely sick. So definitely take the tap water warning seriously and make sure you have either a filtered water bottle or you're only drinking bottled or filtered water. Now in terms of tipping, do know that tipping 10% is normal here. And while card machines do allow for tips, cash is usually preferred. If you want to be extra smooth about it and you want to say, oh, just keep the change, you can just say así está bien, and that means that is good, and then they'll know not to give you your change. In any case, you do want to make sure you have some cash on you, especially in smaller bills or coins, specifically for public toilets and also for tipping. While yes, restaurants will often accept tips over card, you do sometimes need cash to be tipping tour guides or tipping housekeeping at your hotel, etc. In addition to tips though, a lot of market stalls and street food places will not take card. Although this does appear to be changing. At a lot of the markets that I went to, a lot of them actually had a sign that's like, oh, we accept Visa, or even we accept Amex, which I was very pleasantly surprised by because I love collecting points. But no matter what, you need some cash on you for public bathrooms, because most of the public toilets I encountered would have a small fee between 10 to 15 pesos, so definitely worth having some coins on you. And also be sure to pack your own toilet paper as well, because in a lot of these public bathrooms, you do have to pay extra for toilet paper, and in some instances, there's just no toilet paper, period. And while we're on the topic of super niche public toilet advice, certain places will actually have a sign that says that you need to grab your toilet paper before you go in the stalls. And also look for any signs or context clues that tell you shouldn't be flushing the toilet paper, because in certain older buildings, the plumbing is just not built for toilet paper. And so a lot of the time you'll see a sign that says, do not flush anything, or contextually you can see that there's a wastebasket next to the toilet where everybody has put their toilet paper. In those cases, just obviously also don't flush it, because then you might mess up their plumbing. Oh, and also, I know I have so many toilet tips. If you don't see a visible flush, what you should look for is a pedal on the floor. The pedal flush is weirdly common in Mexico City, so yeah, be sure to look for that, press that, and it should flush. On a similar note, also do make sure you are bringing hand sanitizer and also wet wipes out with you, because you're gonna be eating a lot of street food. There isn't always soap in the public bathrooms. That combination just isn't great. Also make sure you're double checking your receipts for correct charges and you're counting the change that you're given. Now, I always like to give people the benefit of the doubt. Honestly, places are chaotic, so sometimes mistakes are just made. But on our trip, there were a few times that there were items added to our bill or times when we weren't given the correct change. So definitely double check your receipts and make sure everything is correct rather than assuming. And again, super specific advice, but do avoid putting your purse or bag on the ground when you're eating and drinking. This is not just a cleanliness thing, but actually there is a Mexican superstition that a purse on the floor is money out the door. I mean, I don't know about you, I don't want to be losing money, so definitely abide by that. And the good news is a lot of restaurants will actually bring a little purse tree for you to hang your bag on, or in a pinch you can just put it on your chair. Obviously not in a way that it's easily grabbable by people, but yeah, just don't put it on the floor. In terms of cleanliness, another very, very random one I learned the hard way is When you are going out to museums and stuff, do not pack any food or drink in your bag, not even gum, because a lot of these museums are incredibly strict in regards to whether or not you can bring in gum. The amount of times I had to check this little packet of gum was the bane of my existence. Like, there was one time at Chapultepec Castle when I had to rent out a locker for 10 pesos just to put my gum in it. And I think I was just being stubborn because I had just bought it. Realistically, I should have just thrown it away, but yeah. This happened again at the Museo Sumaya, where I had to go to coat check, and they put a little sticker on my gum and were like, you can come back for this later. So that was pretty embarrassing. Keep in mind that they're pretty strict on gum for some reason, so no food or drink. And last thing, do be very careful and mindful if you have a professional looking camera. And by that, I mean just like any camera that has detachable lenses, because I did notice in several places that they seem to have rules like, you know, you can take photos with your phone, videos with your phone even are fine, but as soon as you bring out like a professional looking camera, they can get a little bit funny about it. All right, thanks so much for watching. I hope that was helpful. Be sure to let me know in the comments if you have any Mexico City tips to add, and be sure to like and subscribe for more travel videos just like this one. I'll see you next time. Bye.